we're hearing from several cabinet ministers this morning updating the forecast for this year's wildfire season.
Also complicate firefighting efforts. Now, I continue to urge all Canadians to be prepared. When it comes to wildfire, it's an important part of our prevention education. So I encourage all Canadians to check out the Fire Smart program online. It can help you to protect your home and also your community. For additional information, Canadians can also check out the wildfires page on canada.ca for updates and access to the government services. If you do not already have an emergency kit, visit the getprepared.ca to find out what you need to build one and to create your own household plan. Now, once again, I wish to urge all Canadians to continue to look out for one another, follow the local directions, and remain vigilant. Finally, I'd like to thank all the firefighters, emergency personnel, and many volunteers who remain dedicated to helping us fight wildfires and keeping Canadians safe. We're all tremendously grateful for their efforts. Thank you very much, and I'll pass it off to Minister Hajdu.
Well, hello, everybody. It's a joy to be with you here on the territory of Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And of course, as we've said before, many First Nations are affected by climate change. In fact, disproportionately so. 80% of communities are in areas of risk of wildfire. And it's frustrating for those communities to hear conversations from largely conservative politicians denying their reality of the risk of wildfire, denying the reality of climate change. In fact, First Nations people frequently speak to me about the devastating impact of climate change in their communities as they work to keep each other safe. In fact, since April 1st and as of June 5th, 2024, wildfires have affected 31 First Nations communities across the country. Some of these communities include Wabanaki, Fort Nelson First Nation, Doig First Nation, and these fires have resulted in the evacuation of members from 6 First Nations communities, with 1 ongoing partial evacuation in Saskatchewan. Ça peut être un été difficile, mais on a
It promises to be a
travaillé avec
difficult
la
summer,
communauté
but
pour
we're
être
working with the communities
Et le
to
travail
fight these
et
fires.
préparation montrent des résultats. On
Without
réagit
preparation,
plus vite
with good
et
preparation,
on
we'll have
sauve
good
de
results.
temps, de bâtiments et de vies.
Trying
Prenons
to
par
save
exemple la
structures
Première
and
Nation
buildings. The
Doig
First
River.
Nations of White River, for
14
example,
jours après
14
avoir
of
été évacués, ils ont
14
été
days
capables
after
de
being
retourner
evacuated, they
à la
were able
maison
to
et de
return
commencer le
home
processus
and
de
begin
rapatriement.
the
In many First
process of
Nations, this is
restoration.
being made possible by emergency management coordinators. On top of government teams ready to support First Nations, there are now 255 filled coordination positions on the ground funded by the federal government. In Whitefish Lake First Nations number 128, Rennie Houle has been volunteering to help manage wildfires in her community. And thanks to new federal investments, the First Nation has been able to hire her full-time so that they can be prepared and react if wildfires threaten their community. As we speak, all First Nations in Alberta and now Manitoba have emergency coordinators. And this is part of the plan to transition to the self-determined approach, because First Nations have always known what best they need. For example, in Saskatchewan Meadow Lake Tribal Council, they have received preparedness and mitigation funding following severe wildfires, and this is enabling community members to better prepare for evacuations and to reduce their dependence on outside organizations. In Manitoba, a Pine Creek First Nation has enhanced their capacity with Fire Smart funding following a wildfire in May 2020. So with that money, they were able to do wildfire training for members, purchase equipment, manage vegetation, raise awareness, and lead fire prevention information sessions for their community members. Je sais que beaucoup de gens sont anxieux en ces
I know
moments
that many people are very anxious because of wildfires. It will be probably a very difficult season, and we will have to revert to evacuations.
Have been before, during, and after wildfires. And we will do this in a way that respects self-determination, Indigenous leadership, and wisdom. Miigwech, merci.
Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, all.
A number of times when we've actually been together, we certainly talk a lot about climate change these days. The planet is burning up, and climate change is indeed a significant factor. As folks know very well, last summer Canadians experienced the most destructive forest fire season in Canadian history. The federal government has been working and is working aggressively to ensure that Canadians are prepared to respond to wildfires this season and into the future. Mais cette épreuve nous a aussi
But this challenge has also allowed us to draw a number of lessons on what we can do to better prepare to confront these fires, which are becoming more frequent and more intense.
experts led a wildfire forecasting briefing to share what data is telling us this wildfire season may look like. Unfortunately, this forecasting continues what has become an alarming but an all too predictable trend. Climate forecasts indicate that the coming summer months will likely be warmer than normal in most of Canada, with parts of the country seeing less rainfall than normal. Les niveaux élevés d'activité des
The intense activity of forest fires will continue in those areas. Will be under stress, in particular northwest of Alberta, northeast BC, and the coastal area of the northwest.
issued in May, the expected area of highest fire risk has shifted from British Columbia to the Prairie provinces and to most of the Northwest Territories. For June, there is a higher likelihood of above normal fire activity across much of Canada, stretching from the edge of British Columbia across Canada to Western Labrador, New Brunswick, and southern Nova Scotia. In July 2024, fire activity is possible from Yukon and eastern British Columbia across to Western Quebec. The most intense region is likely to be from northeastern British Columbia across the Northwest Territories and the Prairie provinces. This forecast underscores the importance of wildfire mitigation and, of course, of climate adaptation. This government has made significant and long-term investments since 2015, and just a few highlights. Last year, we announced and then fast-tracked agreements with provinces and territories to deliver $250 million of equipment, which is supporting the procurement of life-saving equipment and personnel for this 2024 season. We currently have agreements signed with Manitoba, British Columbia, and the Northwest Territories to access their entire allocation of funding through this program, and work is well advanced to conclude agreements with all other eligible jurisdictions in the coming weeks. We also announced $28 million to fund the training of additional firefighters and are on track to train 1,000 additional firefighters by the end of this year, which is 3 years ahead of schedule. And I was pleased to announce an $800,000 increase in funding for the International Association of Firefighters to bolster their successful program that trains municipal firefighters to fight fires in the municipal wildland interface. Dans le cadre de budget 2024,
Within the 2024 budget framework, we're going to double the amount from $3,000 to $6,000.
Canadian Council of Forest Ministers meeting in Cranbrook, British Columbia. And alongside my provincial and territorial colleagues, we discussed all of government approaches to the 2024 wildfire season in Canada. We are working together to prepare for whatever the next few months have in store. We also came together to collectively launch the Canadian Wildland Fire Prevention and Mitigation Strategy, which recognizes the importance of mobilizing whole-of-society actions towards wildland fire resilience. The strategy will identify activities and allows us to proactively and collectively plan and prepare for wildland fires, recognizing that contributions and implementation will vary across Canada based on existing programs and diverse needs. Il ne s'agira pas.
This will not be a static program or initiative, but it will evolve insofar as the situation changes and that we progress, and that the partners within the entire group in society will identify their priorities.
Mobilized to obtain new support, improve integration and horizontal collaboration so that this strategy is effective and achieves its goals. This is not just words. The strategy includes specific targets and measures of progress to ensure that the federal government and our provincial and territorial partners are taking the action needed to
All right, we're
protect
getting an
lives
update from ministers this morning on Canada's fire season.